Hello, and welcome to the Common Geeking Program. We are a book club style podcast where each episode we discuss a different topic from our own geeky and nerdy perspectives. I am your host, Jeff Leavitt, and this week we are going to be taking a look at Amphibia, the little Disney cartoon. And this time around, I am joined by two fellow nerds here who can introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Taeemul, or Chowder, whichever you prefer. And I'm the one who, recommended everyone go watch Amphibia.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did. It's a fun little time.
And I'm Jocelyn, and I think I've seen the least amount of Amphibia out of all of us.
Not all of it, so yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a good portion of it, just not.
You've seen enough of it to get the vibe and know all the
I know enough to talk about it.
Exactly. But I mean, sometimes we have these episodes and we're really focusing in on a specific aspect of the thing. But this time, I think we're just kind of generally talking about our impressions of the show and maybe some theories for where it's going to go.
Yeah.
In season 3, there's two seasons out right now. But yeah, we're just going to start off by summarizing and talking about it a little bit, and then we'll end off with our rating section where we decide if it was worthwhile and enjoyable. So, Chowder, I mean, you're the one who brought this to us. Do you want to start off by, giving a little, I guess, more of a synopsis, really, than a summary of the show? Just kind of talking about what the general premise is, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Amphibia is a cartoon running on Disney Channel that follows our main character, Anne, who, after being peer pressured by her friends to steal this music box from a thrift shop or something, opens it up, and the music box sends her and her friends to this other world called Amphibia, which is basically
it's a whole lot of frogs.
A lot of frogs, really? Yeah.
So many frogs.
Basically a world where these talking amphibian people, such as frogs and toads and newts,
and axolotls.
Yeah, they never fucking talk about the axolotls, but they're all there. They're there.
They're everywhere.
I guess they're kind of. I guess they're bunched up with the newts, but whatever. And this.
There's the one guy in the town is an axolotl, isn't he? The fucking shopkeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is hardly relevant.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Anyways,
I just really like axolotls, so I was happy that they were.
Yeah,
in the show.
and this world is basically. It's full of giant ass insects and stuff that would be intimidating to frogs and big birds and shit, and but
not actual big bird.
But not actual big bird.
That would be a wild twist. Although it does fucking just steal from enough other shows that I wouldn't fucking put it past them to just drop in Big Bird, because goddamn Kermit was in it.
Yeah, I was just watching that episode. I was like, that's the actual voice actor for Kermit?
That's definitely Kermit. That is definitely Kermit.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize it was the actual voice actor. There's a number of things in this show that just this show, more than any other show, has a number of things where I've just watched it and I'm like, are they fucking allowed to do that?
Yeah. So much.
Yeah, so meets this family called the Planters, who are these farmers, becomes best friends with Sprig, and basically the show follows her as she's trying to get back home with her friends.
Wild and crazy antics.
Well, as she ends up getting on wild and crazy antics. Mostly episodic, but as the series goes on, there's more plot relevant stuff that happens, and But
because the other big thing is that her friends, the ones that she went there with, Sasha and Marcy, aren't actually in most of the episodes because they all showed up at 3 different places in Amphibia. So we don't meet Sasha till the end of season 1, and then Marcy partway through season 2.
Exactly.
So the majority of it is just following around Anne and the Planters, who are Sprig, like Chowder said, and then the patriarch of the family is Hopadiah Hop Pop Planter.
I love him.
Who's a fucking old man, basically, and then Polly, who is a pollywog, a tadpole still, so she's Sprig's little sister. And it's a fun set of characters, and then like they eventually end up sprinkling in like members of the town and making them more significant characters, but I feel like it takes a little while to get there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really limited it, yeah.
Yeah. Bit of a slow burn, but like I think it's good. Like even like the slice of life episodic episodes I think are generally kind of funny and touching, and
yeah.
So
there's really cool world building. Like I think this is one of the more fleshed out worlds in an animated show.
Yeah, definitely.
That I've watched.
I mean, I'd say it's comparable to other things like the other like more
like Owl House.
Yeah,
like Owl House or like Star versus the Forces of Evil or Gravity Falls. It's like it's in that same demographic shoot,
Yeah,
where it's like trying to, it's still obviously a kids show, but it's still trying to push for some more adult themes to kind of make into every once in a while, which is obviously. A lot of other shows are like that, but those are the other notable like Disney Channel shows that are big in that regard. I mean, basically what I was going to say is just like, it's got a lot of fun episodes, and then as we go along, we kind of get more about like, this side of Anne where she kind of just went along with what her friends were doing, and then like the major conflicts in the show end up being between her and Sasha, who's sort of like the de facto leader of their little friend group, because she's just kind of a standard bossy teenager who is a little bit mean but like takes charge of the other two.
And like I think what Amphibia really excels at is like characters, because like when it comes to like world building, the show will put aside like sort of the world for the sake of a joke, like like having Kermit the Frog voice a character, or like there being like amphibian versions of like modern technology, and which
kind of Flintstones-esque.
Yeah,
Flintstones-esque. But like where it really shines is I think the characters, where it's like Sasha's dynamic with Anne's dynamic with
I really like Sasha as a character.
Yeah, no, Sasha's a great character. Anne's dynamic with Sasha and Marcy is like very complicated, where it's like, yes, they're clearly like friends who care about each other, but also these are toxic relationships. And like I think like the creator said that like Sprig was like Anne's first like non-toxic friendship, and
like I feel like for the most part her friendship with Marcy is relatively okay.
I don't know.
There is a lot of stuff that kind of shines through, especially like when you get like the big reveal at the end.
Like once we get to the season 2 finale, it's like I think there's more to Marcy than in season.
Because at first Marcy just kind of seems like a sort of like lovable klutz who's like super intelligent and super nerdy, but doesn't really know how to people very well. But there's
But then like we get to see the season 2 finale, and it's like big twist, and that's something we're probably going to be talking about a lot in a bit. But like before that, spoilers, because like I really think you should.
Yeah, this is like the biggest spoilers. I think like. Anything other than what happens in the season 2 finale, you can probably intuit mostly happening just by like the other episodes or whatever. But like that was like the first twist that I was like, what the fuck? Why are we, what?
Yeah. I mean, the season 1 finale was definitely like a very like tonal shift and like indicative of what
it was for sure. But I feel like there was more setup for it.
Definitely.
I just feel like what we saw of Sasha as a character before the big conflict at the end of season 1, you're like, yeah, we're gonna have a problem with Sasha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's fucking helping the Toads overthrow little communities and shit like that. And...
with Marcy, they chose to like bury the lead a little bit more. Like there are like small bits of like foreshadowing. Like there's this one episode where like they go where Anne, Marcy, Sprig, and Polly end up going to like this basement in King Andreas's castle that has some interesting stuff, and like there's a part where she looks in a mirror, and like Moth like kind of flies over, and it's like, oh hey, imagery that like kind of foreshadows that maybe Marcy isn't completely what she seems, but like but
Yeah,
but
so,
otherwise she
just
does.
to kind of go over like the overarching plot a little bit. Basically, what ends up happening is like the majority of the first season, the whole sort of like driving force for everything just being in this like kind of one-off adventure episodic format is that there is this the exit to the valley that they live in is blocked by like a huge piece of ice, basically. So they're like, oh, we kind of can't leave and go look for, explanations for how to get Anne home until it melts. So that happens at the beginning of season 2. So like after the whole thing where she basically the whole setting of this world is it's kind of got like a weird hierarchy where like, at least from what we see in season 1, is like the frogs are sort of like peasants kind of, or average town folk.
Yeah, like at the bottom, like it's like a caste system where frogs are at the bottom, toads are like above the frogs, but like newts are like way above everyone.
The newts are like the royalty, and then the toads are kind of like the enforcers, like
Yeah.
And then the frogs are the farmers.
Yeah, so they end up being like a bit more brutish, but then like the newts themselves have this system that obviously creates the oppression and stuff like that. But so basically we see a couple of newts in season 1, but it's not really like delved into. They're just kind of background characters because like the world's populated, right? But at the end of season 1, she gets into this whole fight with Sasha, who is working with the toads because that's where she landed, and they end up like fighting on Toad Tower, and then they end like Anne and the planters end up winning out, and they basically like dismantle this toad organization.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like lost in the wind or everything.
Yeah. And like as the tower, and like season 1 ends with like the tower coming down, and like Sasha's about to fall to her death, and like at the last second grabs her, and there's like this really sad moment where like Sasha's like kind of looking at how things have turned out, and she's like, maybe you're better off without me, and like let's go. And man, that's like a really sad moment. I like that about the season 1 finale.
Yeah, true. So then season 2 starts off with basically, now that the it's getting warmer, the iceberg has thawed out, and basically Anne and the planters decide to go on a little road trip to go to the capital of Amphibia, which is Newtopia, which obviously is where the newts primarily live, because they're trying to find information about the music box that Anne has, that is basically the thing that brought them there. And then like lots of little one-off stories happen, and eventually they get to Newtopia, which turns out is where Marcy had landed, which I like that. Whereas like Anne was with the frogs, Sasha was with the toads, and Marcy was with the newts, because like I feel like it fits their characters pretty well.
Oh yeah, I was talking about that with my roommate of like, how would it have been different if they landed in each other's places?
Right.
I've seen like fandom like run with that idea and like create AUs where like, oh, what if Sasha ended up with the frogs instead?
But eventually like they get to Newtopia, and like everything seems great at first. Like the King Andreas seems like super gung-ho about helping them. He seems like a really nice guy, and he but we get like some hints that maybe there's more there that we don't really know about. And as far as we're concerned, we're just assuming, or at least I was, that King Andreas is evil, but he's duping all of them.
Yeah, I mean, like
Marcy.
I mean, the first thing we see of him is like him presiding over like a chessboard with like.
He's huge too.
Oh man, like he's freaking
he's a big
huge.
boy.
He's like,
what the fuck is King Andreas supposed to be? Is he supposed to be a salamander?
Yes, it's a specific species called the giant salamander, which is like compared to other salamanders really freaking big. So anyway, so yeah, he's like presiding over a chessboard with like where the pieces are like are like Anne and Marcy, and
damn,
it's like,
boy, that's thick. That's a thick ass boy. That's a big ass salamander. Holy shit.
Oh, that's why I immediately thought he was evil. He's the same voice actor as Dr. Facilier.
I mean, yeah, but he also, but Keith David. I don't think that's fair to Keith David, who's like IMDb is so massive that like he's in everything. The only
but it was one of those things where it's like, he talked and I went, ooh,
yeah,
sus.
I was trying to place his voice the whole time. I think where I really recognized him was he's also the president in Rick and Morty, and he does a very similar voice for King Andreas as that character.
I mean, that's just his voice. Like, he also voices Goliath from Gargoyles, too. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Goliath is like a good guy, but, you know, the only commonality between all his characters really is that he plays a lot of authority figures because he's got that deep, buttery voice.
Yep.
Yeah, he does big, imposing characters, but because of the way the show is, my mind immediately was like, I don't trust that.
No. I mean,
also because, like, the show spent so much time, like, setting up this world where, like, the toads were oppressing the frogs, right? Like, when we get to a big city that is, like, the capital, the kingdom, I'm like, this show is not going to claim that the ruling party is actually just some chill folk and that the middlemen are the evil ones. Like, that's not how this is going to end. No. I thought that was pretty...
Yeah. And, like, they do make it pretty clear right off the bat that, like, Andreas has something sinister in mind. But, like...
because I actually think before we meet him, we see, you see him in the chessboard and he's, like, putting Anne onto the board or whatever, right? Like, before we actually get introduced to him.
Yeah, and it's, like, that dramatic irony where, like, we know he's up to something, but the characters don't, and it's like, God, they're gonna be in for it in a bit.
So basically, after some adventures in Newtopia, what Anne and Marcy and the Planters end up finding out is that the reason that the music box isn't working is because it has 3 gems on it that were charged. They need to be charged before it can be used again. And to refuel all the gems, they have to go to these 3 different temples, which are their own fun episodes each time that they learn different lessons, etc., etc. But eventually they end up getting the jewels charged back up, and then they, happenstantially meet up with Sasha, and they who's still working with Captain Grimes, who is like the head toad guy, and they basically go to the kingdom and
keep in mind Sasha and Grimes are like planning a revolt against the newts.
Yeah, exactly. So Sasha and Grimes end up basically capturing the king and bringing a toad army or whatever, and then while they're sort of living it up in the palace while things are still going down, and Anne and the Planters and Marcy are planning to, turn the tables again, and they're all mad at Sasha. Grimes and Sasha discover this prophetic image of like...
I think it's just a mural depicting like...
Yeah, it's just a mural of like King Andreas like in a huge evil laughing pose holding the music box, and they're like, oh damn.
Over like
good
fires
and
that, like
isn't it?
sad people, and it's like...
Yeah, they're like, oh, we did the right thing actually.
Oh
right,
shit.
It's just, like they were kind of just trying to grab power and like own the kingdom or whatever, which is like,
not great, yeah.
Not great, but like
they're not trying to destroy the world or anything.
But like as it's revealed later, King Andreas wants to use the music box in order to like
colonize other worlds, basically.
Yeah, conquer other worlds,
Love it.
including like Earth, and basically just be what Jeff said, a colonizer. Just colonize the multiverse.
He wants to Thanos.
So then what kind of ends up happening is like Anne and, Anne comes back to fight off Sasha, and Sasha's trying to explain like, no, I mean, I know we weren't planning to, but this was the right thing to do. But then obviously Anne is like, I don't fucking trust you anymore. Yeah. And then basically King Andreas ends up getting the upper hand again, and then he gets the music box. And then as this reveal is happening, it's also revealed that Marcy was sort of in on it, and she knew that he was going to do this, but he like framed it in a way to her that it was like, oh, we're going to go explore new worlds together. And then it's also revealed that right before the incident that brought them there, that Marcy had this like falling out with her parents because they were planning to move away, so she wasn't going to be with Anne and Sasha anymore. So she's the one who kind of orchestrated them going to Amphibia in the first place, because she had read about the box in some like obscure tome or something like that at the library, because she's a nerd.
Yeah,
it's a reveal, like she kind of did this, like
Anne and Sasha to Amphibia on purpose, like knowing that the music box had that ability. Like maybe she wasn't like completely...
She wasn't 100% sure that it would happen, but she was prepared for it to happen,
Yeah, she really wanted to get away from the stuff going on with her family and be with her friends. more than anything
which
else.
Which is, shitty and toxic, because she also ripped her friends away from their families. And then the season ends, and this is, like, the biggest fucking spoiler. Basically, Marcy, gets the music box working and throws it to Anne just enough time to transport Anne and the planter.
No, she actually, Anne and the planters, managed to go through the portal, but, the music box itself, it doesn't actually end up with Anne. But what... but what does end up happening is that this child gets impaled by a big fuck-off sword.
King Andreas fucking kills Marcy. Maybe.
Well,
probably. I don't know.
Did you see the end credit thing?
Oh, no.
They showed, they showed, the intro for the third season, and, there's a part where,
she's hooked up
Marcy's
to,
alive.
tubes and stuff. She's in a tube with tubes connected with water and stuff. So technically not dead. We got to see a sign of life.
Yeah. That's good, because I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, that's sad because I like this character. And it's also sad because this is a fucking 13-year-old child that Disney has just murdered on a show. And then what was the point of having her flip and, turn out to be bad or whatever if you're just going to immediately kill her off without even that much of a redeeming moment or whatever. So I'm glad that she's still alive. That makes me better.
She's going to be relevant in the third season, but
the one thing that I was not sure about is, did Sasha also go through the portal?
Sasha did not go through the portal. She's still in Amphibia.
Because I know she didn't end up...
No, she didn't.
I thought she did too, but she didn't end up in the same place as the planters and Anne.
No, as far as anyone can tell, Sasha's still in Amphibia,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I saw her in the portal, so that's weird.
Yeah, I thought she went through too, but then when they showed it on Earth, she wasn't there, so I was assuming that they just, had her wind up on a different place, but I'm not... Yeah, so I don't know about that, but basically the season ends with Anne and the planters now on Earth, basically flipping the script, because now... the first two seasons was
her in Amphibia,
and, exploring and learning about Amphibia, and now it's going to be the other main characters, the planters, learning and exploring Earth, which
is just a good little.
Apparently, Anne has a cat, and I'm excited.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, and
but yeah, I mean that's pretty much the synopsis of the plot overall. I mean, obviously. The entire both seasons are riddled with a lot of micro stories because it's very episodic in nature,
and also stories that don't immediately seem relevant but then become more significant later. There was
the robot.
The robot. Yeah, there was this episode where Anne and the planters ended up in this ancient sort of factory, and they had their shenanigans, but there was a robot that came out of the factory, and they eventually they would befriend the robot, and also the robot dies in season 2, which is very sad.
Oh yeah, I forgot he died. Yeah, that's so sad.
Robo.
He didn't really get a lot to do.
No, he didn't.
He didn't get a lot to do, but
especially for how many episodes after the factory episode that they would just end it with showing him following them, and then he gets there and he's just this is our friend now, and we're like, oh okay, and then the subsequent next 5 episodes are oh, he's off doing something else, and I'm like, why did we foreshadow him showing up so much if we're just gonna write him out of the script in every subsequent episode except for 2? Kind of lame. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it was a bit odd.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the show, I think, overall is pretty good. If I had one major complaint about it, I would say that, aside from the number of episodes that it gets from being, the 2 episodes in 24-minute format, I think that a lot of the episodes really feel like they could have used the extra time in the middle of them. I feel like a lot of the plots, I sort of get the impression of oh, I see something building up, and then it ends, and there's no and then it resolves itself almost immediately, but there's no middle to the episodes, if that makes sense. It feels it's all set up and then all payoff, but no living in the space in between times.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean, and that's definitely a result of most of the majority of the episodes being 2 12-minute episodes.
Yeah, they're the 11:25 runtime. They just happen to package them as if they're not, kind of like SpongeBob.
Yeah,
and it's so hard to tell.
It's an interesting
good arcs in that time frame. It's really tough.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, then I think about other shows, right? Like, Steven Universe was also that way, right? Like, I don't like it was certainly like 10-minute episodes, right?
Yeah, but Steven Universe had like how many seasons to?
And also, how many episodes did they get approved to be 2-parters? Because that's the other thing is, this season had a couple more 2-parters where it is just one episode for the full 30 minutes, and they don't always like to approve those in the script phase.
Yeah, it's weird though, because it's like, I don't even think it's entirely, like, I don't think it ruins it entirely. It's just like, it's a bit more noticeable that like the episodes feel shorter than they were written to be in some cases.
Yeah.
And like sometimes that's not even a bad thing, because like sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I think we're fine skipping a montage in the middle. Like, I think we got the idea that they were setting up, and then we got the idea with the payoff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whereas like sometimes it was like if some of the stories were kind of simpler and it's like a story that's been done in cartoons like a billion times, and then we just skip the middle of it, I kind of got to the end and I was like, oh, thank God. I don't really feel like doing the middle of that story again and again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of any exact examples, but sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I got the setup there. Like, the episode, like, when they were doing the third temple with Sasha, where it was just like, they were starting to set up that like Anne and the Planters clearly didn't trust Sasha, and then like the next scene is Sasha is like, I've been watching you, I know you don't trust me, and I'm like, oh, we didn't get to like really see a lot of that, but I got it, I knew that was coming.
Yeah,
but we didn't need a montage to kind of like shove that down my throat. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And also, I mean, to be fair, Sasha is like shown as someone who's like very aware of like other people and just like very good at like.
Sure, I guess it's just like with kids shows, I'm used to like the
hand-holding almost.
Yeah, not necessarily hand-holding, but it's like they tend to like take ideas and show you a few instances of it to like really get you to get that. Whereas I feel like in most of the cases with Amphibia, it shows you one instance and then it says that it happened a bunch of times, basically, which like I said, is not always a bad thing, because sometimes I think like I'm happy to skip through that part and get to the part that's interesting, which is the resolution. But it is something that makes that format very noticeable to me, where I'm just like, oh, okay, we're here now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a interesting thing that like I think overall is probably majority wise to its detriment, but not as much as you would think.
I mean, it's a trade-off. On one hand, it's like, it can sometimes feel like it doesn't have the time to like linger on something, but other times it's like, hey, we get to move on to the actual meat of the thing, which is
right,
nice.
And have twice as many stories, basically.
Yeah.
And you know,
so I think it handles it a little. It handles it well. It's just it's more noticeable to me than like other shows, like Steven Universe, for example, that I think like really felt like the 10 episode format works with, because like it is a really hard format to work with. I think like most shows with the 10 episode format, if they're trying to actually have like underlying plot, it just doesn't do it well. You know what I mean?
It's really tough if you're doing the short episodes to do an overarching plot, which is why they usually tend to be episodic with like hints of stuff. And then once you're like 3 seasons in and you've hinted at stuff enough, you can actually explore those little threads that you've put in, because we know the characters enough that you don't need to waste that time. But I'm actually impressed this show does it as well as they do.
And unfortunately for Amphibia, like, it's only gonna get 3 seasons because I guess Disney's just obsessed with just like not giving any of its cartoons more than a 3rd season ever.
Yeah, there's some like I that's also not the fucking, it's not the same exact thing, but like Transformers shows also tend to be about that length. Like, they never get more than 3 seasons because it's like, let's move on to the next thing, which is, you know,
it could be good and bad if they know going in.
They knew going in, so like it's gonna feel like a complete story when season 3 ends, probably. Hopefully,
unless they're really gunning for a movie.
Unless they're really gunning for a movie. It's just like, but like I know like I feel like the reason for that is because like some corporate thing where it's like, oh, if we go more than 3 seasons, we have to like pay people more or something like that, and it's just like,
that's
a dick move, really. That's why.
I mean, I would think it's partially that. I would also guess, like, I would not be surprised if that was part of the reasoning. I would also suspect that, like, if you have a show that, like, lingers on, like, the same set of characters for too long, then the longer it goes on, the more you're losing opportunities to, like, merchandise and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if they make any fucking Amphibia toys or whatever, right? But if the cast of characters has not expanded past season 3, right? And then they get to the end of season 3, it's like, well, they probably made all the merchandise that would actually be fruitful for them to make. You know what I mean?
True.
I don't know.
Well, it's weird because they actually don't tend to make a lot of merch for their animated shows because it actually
for Disney shows,
the cost to make something, especially if it's only lasting 3 seasons, isn't effective.
Yeah, this isn't the 80s. We're not making toys out of everything and everyone.
God, I wish we were, though.
Well, I mean, if we're really saying the 80s was more like we're making things out of every toy rather than the other way around.
That's true.
Which we're kind of back to anyway.
Unfortunately. Like, everything has to be a fucking reboot.
I like a mix of both, personally. Like, I think a lot of great shows are made by, like, just trying to sell toys personally, but, you know,
you
I'm
can
also
get really
a toy
fun
collector,
stuff.
so I'm biased.
Yeah, but also it's just like...
it feels scummy in some ways.
It feels scummy, but also just like, right now, I feel like there's an imbalance of, like, oh, it's all, like, reboots and shows that, like, are based on something already, and, like, shows like Amphibia don't get the love it deserves, I feel.
Yeah, it don't really get the time of day.
Which is like, look, I'm looking forward to that He-Man show, but like, it
it
is crowding out like other things.
It's one of those things
Like,
where when you see all of the new original content being canceled, and then you're seeing 6 reboots greenlit around the same time, that's when it feels bad. Because I like having both, but you need to actually be doing both.
And especially if you're looking at, like, you know, specifically just Disney, too, right? Like, with movies, it's like, yeah, they still are making new movies, but, like, how many fucking, like, classic Disney princess movies, reboots in live action do we have to wade through before we get to that?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man, how many times do we have to see, like, a Disney villain be like, oh, they weren't actually evil. Her mother was just murdered by Dalmatians.
Don't even get me started. That's a conversation for... We could do a whole fucking episode on the different variations of the Disney live-action reboot.
but to steer back to Amphibia.
Amphibia, yeah.
But to steer back to Amphibia, it's really cool because it's like got all these like influences like from Zelda and like Dragon Ball Z. There's like and it's like, wow, it does all this while still, like, having this unique vibe to it, which is great. Like, you know, the way...
I'm trying to remember, like, all of the instances of things where I was like, oh, are they fucking allowed to do that? Because there were some good ones, like...
The episode I was just watching with my roommate, they went to the quote-unquote mall, in a way.
Yeah.
And all of the shops were frog or amphibian-themed versions of real stores.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Waxolotl Pretzelotl was probably my favorite, though.
Oh, man, I was getting a kick out of all the puns. Like, if you love puns, there's, like, a lot of frog-based puns.
Yeah, there's so many puns.
Wait, is that the... No, that's the mall episode. I was thinking of the episode in the where Sprig is running around the hotel with fucking...
with the credit card?
Yeah, and what's her name?
Mabel!
Yeah. /
like,
Louise
yeah.
/ I was trying to think of her actual name.
Kristen Shaw.
Yeah, I'm terrible at acting
I
names.
don't know how to...
Yeah. Shaw. Is it Kristen? Really?
The only thing that stood out to me in terms of voice acting was Sam Rigel definitely voiced a character during the D&D styled episode, and he was being Sam Rigel, and I was like, "Hey, sir, I know you. What are you doing here? I know you voice direct this, but what are you? What's going on here?"
And there was the Gravity Falls episode.
Yeah, where like Alex Hirsch like played like frog version of Grunkle Stan and Zeus.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like
fucking are Stan and Zeus the same fucking actor?
Oh yeah, Stan and Zeus
Probably.
are the same actor. Alex Hirsch.
That checks out.
That's why they got them for the episode. One person in a booth, let them go.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Wait, I'm trying to think. One of my favorite jokes. I've got two jokes that stood out to me. My favorite in the entire fucking show is the beginning of season 2. It's changed to summer, and Anne says something about, "I wonder what this season will have in store."
There's a lot of
like, just
also mic drop quotes too that you're just like, ooh.
And then my absolute favorite joke in the entire show is when they're fucking in the frog factory and like Sprig is trying to decipher all of the technology, and then it was like, oh, put a disc in a slot, and he goes, "What's a disc?" And then Anne goes, "I don't know. I'm from Earth, not from the 90s." And I was like, "Fuck me."
That was such a good line.
Killed me because, like, no, I'm old.
Especially because then later we get the like Skipman, which is just the Walkman, and she's like, "Oh, old technology," and I'm like, "Oh god, I used to walk around with that in my backpack."
You used to have a
in
Walkman?
middle school. Yes,
I never had a Walkman.
I had it in middle school because I liked CDs.
I remember, like, back in elementary school, the Walkman was like, "Oh shit, that's so cool." Or was it elementary?
Yeah, I stole it from my
I don't,
brother.
It's so long ago, I can't even remember.
I know I've nenever actually, like, seen a person with a fucking Walkman before. Maybe it was just different vibes in your school versus mine. Yeah, no.
Really?
Brown school did not have any fucking Walkmans in it, let me goddamn tell you.
I stole it from my brother.
Nice.
Because he got, like, an MP3 player, and so I was like, yes, so I can have the Walkman.
No,
yeah.
like, this was, like, back before I even moved to Schenectady, man. Like, I was in New York back in the 90s. Oh, shit.
Wow. Wow, we're old.
Yeah, the fucking ripe old age of 26.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're fucking young. Why are we going, oh, we're old? But it feels like that. It feels like we're old.
It's that 90s nostalgia is just like a weird thing that makes everyone feel old and also a child at the same time. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, no. So
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Amphibia like full of like interested, like voices. That's like, oh, it's that voice actor. You know, like we mentioned, like Kristen Schaal, Alex Hirsch, Keith David, but. And then there's also like, Anne is voiced by Brenda Song, who like, who used to be like London Tipton on like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
London Tipton, Wendy Wu Hung Warrior,
like
and now
a bunch of like the
wife to Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, that part that still throws me for a fucking loop. Like Richie Rich and London Tipton are married and have a kid.
Macaulay Culkin is not Richie Rich.
He played Richie Rich in like the live action Richie Rich movie. Yeah,
he did.
He did.
What? I thought literally the only thing Macaulay Culkin has been in was Home Alone.
No, he's been in more than that. Like, it's not as famous as Home Alone, but like, you know, the Good Son, which was like a horror movie about a killer child.
Checks out.
Who did Matt Mercer play? I mean, it makes sense. He was in 3 episodes?
What did he play?
It just says additional voices.
Yeah? I feel like I know the answer to that one, but I can't remember right now.
I think I heard him in the episode that was D&D focused. I know at least that episode. I'm just scrolling through the list of names, and I'm just like, wow, it's a very extensive list.
Richie Rich, damn. How did I not know that?
We're just learning a lot here.
Yeah. Something that, like, this is kind of a non sequitur from what we were talking about, but something that really stood out to me is the, it took a while for me to place it, but some of the facial animations really reminded me of this YouTube animator, Chris O'Neill, who, like, if you know, Oni cartoons.
One G,
He did, like, one of the most famous ones, I think, is like, I don't know, it's like a weird fucking vulgar Harry Potter joke thing where it's like it's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Yes.
That meme. But like every once in a while, one of the characters will just like strike a very specific like face like pose or whatever, and I'm like, did fucking Chris O'Neill work on this show? And I don't think he did, and I was trying to look it up, but it's like, it's so striking to me that once I noticed it, I couldn't like unsee it.
Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure like I mean, this show is like...
That's a fun art style that a lot of animators really like to do.
Yeah.
And also, like, this show is full of, like, references to other stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, someone like Chris O'Neill's stuff. And speaking of references, there's a lot of Dragon Ball Z references, like in the season 2 finale, and basically goes fucking Super Saiyan, and that's just wild to me.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, and,
she, like...
Sprig's hair is Goku at one point in the mall.
Exactly.
Not the mall episode, in the hotel episode.
Yeah, that was a...
It's just because we have a bunch of weebs working in animation. It's
that was
fine.
a weird payoff to the whole, like, setup of the blue gem not being fully charged thing. Like, that is not where I thought they were going to go with that at all. Like, why was the gem being not fully charged mean that Anne could get superpowers from it? That doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I mean, I'm sure that's something we'll learn about more in season 3.
Well, I think it means it charged her along with the gem.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also...
Because that makes
Is what
it's
I'm
also something
assuming
we're
it
going to learn
did.
about more in season 3, because, like, in the season 3 intro they showed, it shows, like, Anne, like, being able to, like, actually use that ability.
Yeah, she, like, learns how to control it and stuff.
Gotcha.
And does it on Earth, which is wild.
I'll have to watch this fucking season 3 intro y'all are talking about. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I literally just let the credits roll, and then all of a sudden it started playing, and I was like,
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, do you want
credit
to,
scene.
before we move on to the rating section, do we want to talk about, like, where we think the story is going to be going in season 3?
Yeah.
I'm excited for well, also I feel like we skipped over a very important thing, and that's Polly now has legs.
Now.
She grew legs.
Polly is no longer just a tadpole. She is the next phase and has legs and her little tail.
Perfect.
So she's now much more mobile. Not that she wasn't mobile before, because she would just bounce everywhere. But I'm excited to see her, trying to be more grown up because she has legs, and I feel like that's definitely going to be an episode that they try and do. It's like, Polly's all grown up, except she's not.
I was
she's
trying to
still a
figure
tadpole.
out like how their ages made any sense at all, because like I was trying to look up Sprig and Polly's ages, and supposedly according to the thing that Polly is 5 and Sprig is 10, which seems like it makes sense, like they could live as tadpoles for a while. But then Sprig also said something about like him and Polly were really young when their parents died or whatever, and I'm like, and so he doesn't really remember them, and I'm like, how young could young could Sprig possibly have been if Polly was literally alive at that time?
I mean, Polly, I guess...
That means that Polly would have been like 1 and Sprig would have been 5, but he should still remember that stuff, right? Because Polly is 5 now.
It depends on how long. It depends on how long Polly was like an egg.
I guess.
Because if it was one of those things where like she was an egg and not even really technically born yet, a la Finding Nemo or like like that kind of thing. Whereas, like, he was younger and she was incubating.
I guess so, yeah.
When the mom died. Like, that, I could see them doing that. I feel like they're going to go into that in the next season. Because they were like, oh, tragic backstory. Yeah. Let's unlock that next time.
Something that I'm hoping for is, like, there's no, like, time skip when we pick off, and we just pick off right where we left off at the end of season 2. Because, like, I kind of want to see, like, Anne having to, like, process all that nonsense that just happened. Also, like how
for sure
how she like how her parents are reacting to all this. I just want to see all that juicy drama.
Something that I'm hoping for in season 3 is like if Sasha is still in Amphibia, I'm hoping that a significant number of episodes are just Sasha-centric.
Yeah, no,
because
I really
there's a lot of
too.
other characters in Amphibia that I'd like to see more of, and it would be a little bit less interesting if it was just Anne and the Planters in Earth, I think, for the entire season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I also just want more of Marcy. Like, obviously, we don't really know what's up with Marcy, but, like, obviously she can't be dead. Yeah. So, like, it sucks because I feel like we did not get any time with her compared
we didn't
to
get
Sasha.
To learn too much about Marcy, and I think that's something season 3 is going to handle. Something I also think season 3 is going to handle is that, like, it feels like Sasha's going to, like, lead a sort of revolt back in Amphibia. Because,
rebellion, yeah, I would guess that too.
Because, like, we see, like, this one shot of, like, her and Grime and, like, the other members of, like, Wartwood. So, like, it's like, oh, shit.
It also just makes sense for their characters.
Yeah.
at this point. So
so that's
I'm excited.
I think
overall.
we're going to get a lot of like positive characterization for Sasha in season 3, which I think it would be really good.
Yeah, and I also feel
now
like
that we've kind of moved on to be like maybe Marcy is the more problematic one. I think it would be like I think we've seen out the whole Anne Sasha conflict for the most part. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
they can still butt heads,
Yeah.
but I think we've explored like why Sasha is toxic, and it would be nice to explore a little bit further, like her good qualities and how it's, you know, because they talk about stuff, but they don't show it quite as much with her.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and like she's a good person.
She has these flaws. Like that's the thing about Sasha. She is like at first glance like the popular,
just a bossy white girl,
the popular cheerleader, mean girl. But like, it's very.
If this was made in the 90s, she would have been stuck at just that. She wouldn't have had much more nuance.
She does genuinely care about Anne and Marcy, and like, you know, a lot of her bossiness is that she thinks she knows what's best for others, and it's, you know, it's like she's a character who has to like work through things, and you know, she's a kid who may not always do the right thing, and that's fine because kids learn.
They're kids.
And hopefully they'll keep learning after they're impaled by giant swords.
Exactly. Look, sometimes you gotta have a learning experience, you know? Sometimes you gotta, like, get impaled by a big fuck-off sword before you become a better person.
It shocked me so much. I literally was just like,
what the fuck?
This is Y7, and you just... Not only did you stab her, but you can see the blood mark.
I knew it was going to be wild when at the beginning of the episode they have to have like the little fucking disclaimer.
A disclaimer,
it gets kind of intense at the end of this episode, and I'm just like, we also had an episode in the season where Hop Pop fucking casually killed a guy, so what the fuck is going to happen in this season?
Oh my god, remember like that Gravity Falls episode, there's this one part where like a bunch of like monsters that the alt universe Stan had trapped, like, drag him into a room, the door closes, and, like, red substance, like, leaks out from under the door, and it looks like fucking blood, and, like, we hear Stan go, "No, that's just wax!" And it's like, we know it's fucking blood.
And then later, on in the episode, they're like, talking about it, and then go, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, he died. Yeah. Well, because that's one of those ratings things where it's like, in order to maintain your rating, you need to show a sign of life. You can get away with it when characters aren't human.
Yep.
Which is why most of the show, they can get pretty violent and pretty graphic, and it's fine because it's a frog. Yes, we've grown emotional attachment to frogs, but that's fine. They're still not human. It's okay.
You see this shit in Transformers all the time, where like whenever they attack a human or whatever, it's like, oh, you blow up a plane, have to pan up to show the parachute, or
yeah. It's one of those things where like we dealt with it a lot on one of the shows I was working on, where it was like, nope, you have to show some sign of life, which is how you get in Pokemon, for example, we're blasting off again because sign of life, they're fine. But it's really interesting to see how Amphibia, because I can always tell like, oh, yep, they had to add that line so that they could get away with doing that scene.
Well, but that's the thing is that I feel like they play with those expectations a little bit, because like they do add in the line where he's like, oh, it's barbecue sauce, or it's not barbecue sauce, it's fucking wax, right? But then they also, a minute later, just straight up say he's dead. So it's like, I feel like they're playing with those expectations where like, oh, you're not expecting the gory thing because it's a kid show, and then they say the joke to make it okay, and then they later are like, yeah, no, he's dead. Just like, I was thinking about
they're like, we're backtracking if we can.
Episode where like, you know, Hop Pop like is like fighting with a bodyguard and then throws him into like a pit of soup or whatever, and you know, like us watching, you're like, oh, he would probably be dead, but they wouldn't kill him. And then later in the episode, someone just rushes in the room and goes, "There's a body in the vat of soup," and I was like, what?
Yeah, no, the season 2 finale got like delayed, and like everyone's pretty certain it's because the whole child impaling thing.
That's actually probably why they got the disclaimer on the front, was to allow it to still be its
and also probably
rating.
Why they showed the season 3 opener after the credits. Yeah, because
in the credits,
like, I remember AMA that the creator did, Matt Braley, and he said that like if he could have, he would have wanted to not have, like, that intro so that, like, the audience is left wondering,
people are left wondering until the next season.
She actually got... Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing that always bugged on our kids show, was it's tough. Especially because sometimes you'll have the people who rate it aren't always consistent. And so sometimes what'll fly for one of the rating groups won't at all for a different one. And so sometimes you end up having to go back to the drawing board because, well, that group that day decided that was not TVY7. It's very interesting. And you get some really creative things that happen when you have to work around what they note. So,
but yeah, I mean, do you guys have anything else you want to touch on before we move on into the ratings? I feel like that's a pretty good place to end it myself, but
no, I think we're good.
Cool. Thank you both for a very good old discussion. Very fucking wet. Because frogs, I guess. It was wet. The discussion was wet.
Okay, Jeff.
I mean, fuck it. Might as well go all the way. Moist.
Oof.
No.
Squishy.
We are now going to move on to the rating section, where each of us are going to rate the topic on a scale from... Ooh, there's a lot of fun ones. I really want to... I mean, I don't know if this is the best thing to rate it off of, but I just want to fucking bring up the character of Michelangelo, because that's a great... The little baby snail. I was happy that they brought him back, because after he didn't show up after the one episode, I was like, are they just gonna fucking ignore Michelangelo? Because he's a great... So I'm tempted to do 1 out of 10 Michelangelos, but
1 out of 10
sure.
or out of 10 impaled children.
No.
Oh my god, no!
Not gonna do that one.
I do like I do like snails. 1 out of 10.
Yeah. Michelangelos.
Okay, we'll do 1 out of 10 Michelangelos. Okay, Chowder, you brought this to us. Why don't you start off?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I think this episode's pretty much shown what it is I like about this show. Good world building, but especially great characters, great, like, character dynamics. And, like, these characters have, like, a sort of depth to them where it's like their relationship isn't just what you see, but also just, like, a lot of underlying things. And also that these relationships can be a little messy, as seen with, like, Anne's relationship with Sasha and Marcy, and it's like really good. And also I just like the setting. I like frogs. I like that this setting is just like, oh, what if frogs like people and
the dominant species, yeah.
and also like what kind of things would like a frog be scared of? What kind of things would a frog have to look out for in a world? And which would be like insects and birds and parasites and shit. I love the creature design,
but also let's talk about frog capitalism and how it's awful.
Yeah, let's talk about frog capitalism. Let's talk about frog feudalism. Let's talk about
how college isn't for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah,
that was a great episode. Sorry.
I like the humor of it, which makes sense. Like Matt Braley worked on Gravity Falls, and Gravity Falls is a hilarious show.
So how many Michelangelos do you give it?
I'm rambling. I'm gonna give it 8 out of 10 Michelangelos. Maybe a 9 if season 3 turns out amazing.
All right. Jocelyn, how many Michelangelos are you tossing up to bat here?
For what I've seen of the 2 seasons, because I haven't even fully watched a season. I've seen like a majority of it, but not all of it. I think it's very good, and it makes me realize I should probably watch more kids animated TV, because I fell off of it for a bit. But I give it an 8, and if season 3 sticks to landing, it gets a 10.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty good show. I would say, for me personally, I would probably land probably in like the 7 range. Like it's a really good show, but like a lot of the times where I'm noticing that like, you know, plots are cut short or things like that, like there still is a lot in there that I feel like is sort of has a simplification to it that like I know kid shows can do better on, you know, where it's like all the characters, like they clearly act how characters do in like a kid's show as opposed to like feeling like they necessarily do things for like totally logical reasons. It's more like the things that they do are to make a point about their character rather than like what that a real person would actually do in a situation like that. It's kind of a thing that's hard to describe, where it's just like when I'm comparing it to something like other kid shows that have like this kind of depth, it's like that's sort of how characters act in like Gravity Falls. But like Steven Universe, I feel like most of the characters act like, you know, consistent, fleshed out versions of themselves, if not like, you know, a little dramatic, obviously, for a show. But whereas like I still feel like in this show, like sometimes the characters, I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is a cartoon character, and I understand that, and it makes me a little bit more aware of that than some other similar shows. But still, it's really charming. I like the setting a lot, which is why I hope that, you know, we'll still be getting some of like Amphibia in season 3. And I like the dynamics of all the main characters for the most part. It's just like, you know, I sometimes wish that some of the like other background characters got a bit more to do. And I hope that some of them come back for season 3, even the ones that are in the world that we're not primarily going to be in. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's a pretty good show overall. That's just not, you know, like super top tier for me, I would say.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up. Thank you all for listening to the Common Geeking program. Again, I have been your host, Jeff Leavitt. You can find me, I do a toy review YouTube channel. That is Alchemist Prime Reviews, and I have, I do have an Instagram where I post my artwork, but I have not posted like over a year because, you know, the stuff in the world that happened. And again, I've been joined by Chowder and Jocelyn. Do either of you have stuff you want to toss out there?
Hi, I'm Taeemul, or Chowder, whichever you prefer. You can find me on Twitter at Taeemul Chowder.
I'm Jocelyn, and if you watch Amphibia and you like Amphibia, also check out Mau Mau Heroes of Pure Heart on Cartoon Network, but also HBO Max. That's where the easiest place to watch it is. There's 40 episodes, man. Get on it. They're
it's
all
good.
good.
I mean, now that I'm done watching Amphibia, I'll have a void where I have to fill something to watch. So.
Yeah, man, come on. It's Emmy nominated, which means nothing, but like, it's fun. It's a good time. It's a fun show. But
yeah, no, our next episode is going to be airing on, well, we've got our Common Briefing Program episodes where we look at the geek news from the month prior, and that will be on the first Friday in July, which is the 2nd of July. And then our next episode like this, our proper Common Geeking Program episodes, where we'll just be looking at another topic, will be on the 16th of July, the 3rd Friday. So be sure to tune in for that. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to leave off here. Thank you for listening, subscribing, sharing, everything that you do, and we'll talk to you next time.
Ciao.
Bye.
The Common Geeking program is hosted by Jeff Leavitt, joined this episode by Taeemul Chowdhury and Jocelyn Barkenhagen. This episode is sponsored by giant salamanders, the thickest of boys. The podcast is created and produced by Colin Ketchen and Jeff Leavitt, and features original music by Colin Ketchen. This episode was edited by me, Taeemul Chowdhury. We'd love for you to stay engaged with us on social media at Geeking Program, or by using hashtag CGP. If you want to know more about us and all of our other projects, head to commongeekingprogram.com. Stay in touch, stay tuned, and as always, thank you for listening to this podcast. Ciao!